How to make money from buying and selling domain names. Domain names are valuable assets to organizations and people who own websites. With experience and the right resources, you can buy and sell domain names for a good profit.
Can you make good money selling domain names? Yes, of course, you can. There are quite a few people who have made a fortune out of flipping domain names.
In history, the most expensive domain name sold was business.com, purchased by RH Donnelly for $345 million. Bear in mind, this is not the norm. Let's have a look at some stunning records of transacted values for some domains. But to achieve similar success could be just a dream. You have to be extremely lucky and smart to do so.
However, you can treat domain flipping as a profitable small side business. Imagine if you buy a domain name for $12 and selling it for $140, giving a whopping 1,060% return on investment. You can always scale it up to enhance your earning. How cool is that? You now have a second source of income. Let's listen to people who are experts in this business.
Ready to make some money off some domain names?
Yes, all the money.
We're going to show you how here on The Journey. Buying and selling domain names for a lot of people is this really exciting adventure that's like finding some hidden pirate treasure or winning the Powerball.
Yeah, there are so many stories of people that have purchased a domain name for like $8 years ago and selling them for millions of dollars. So for those of you that are a little bit more adventurous, you're probably asking, well, how can I get started?
Yeah, and here's 5 tried and true tips to help you sell domain names for a profit.
The first step to selling domain names for profit is to narrow your focus. Now, what that means is there are already millions of domain names out there purchased already with endless combinations of extensions like .app, .club, .wtf.
We've actually done a video on domain names, and you can check that out right up here. And be sure whenever you're starting your search, start with an industry or a field that you're really familiar with, because if you know that that domain name is going to be valuable to them, then it's a lot more likely to sell.
Right, and you can even look up keywords using things like Keyword Planner or Google Trends to see what might actually be popular and what isn't.
But here's what you shouldn't do. You shouldn't start, targeting prospective buyers based on their perceived economic status, right? You think that they make a lot of money, so hey, of course they're going to buy this.
They're going to buy all the things. Like, we'll say a lawyer, for example. Lawyers make big bucks, right? So we're like, cool, let's buy a bunch of domains and try to sell to lawyers.
But in reality, you don't know anything about lawyers.
Yeah, you don't even know if they can actually use those domain names. So you might have spent tons of money buying all sorts of different endings and extensions, only to find out they don't even care about it because they can't use it.
So make sure you understand your audience, and eventually the sales will follow. You can even keep a domain name for 10 years and still sell it at a considerable profit.
Yeah, and I know what a lot of people do is they'll create either like mini web pages or use services like, say, cash parking, and basically put ads on their website. So they generate a little bit of income while they're holding on to that domain name for those prospective buyers.
Yeah, and you can even add in some SEO, so that way it really justifies that cost to the buyer.
Yep, they can see the traffic's already coming in, so that's just less work that they have to do, and it's easy for you to sell it.
The second step is to find domain names that actually offer some real value to those potential customers. So you've already figured out the industry that you're really familiar with. Now put yourself in their shoes. If you were actually looking for a domain name and you worked in that industry, what domain name would you want and which one would be valuable to you?
Yeah, so let's say we're in real estate. I have a pretty good example of someone bought the domain name tempeapartments.com for $200. That is dirt cheap when you really understand the industry in Tempe. So there is a pretty prominent college, Arizona State University, go Sun Devils. But there's a high turnover with all the college students, so people are constantly going to TempeApartments.com.
So ask yourself a couple questions, kind of help you navigate that. So the first question could be, how much of a profit are these prospective customers going to be making, right? So for Tempe Apartments, how much does rent cost, right? What kind of money are they going to be bringing in? And the second question to ask yourself is really, would you buy this if you were working in that industry? And then again, look at some other domain names that people are currently using in that industry. So, other apartment locators or tenants, what are they using?
Yeah, what do those domain names look like? Are they just awful and terribly long? Because you could potentially leverage that. A couple other things to ask yourself is, what are they spending on advertising with that industry? Now, real estate is pretty competitive, so advertising is going to be just as competitive. So those budgets are pretty high. And then lastly, does this domain name sound authoritative in this field? So Tempe Apartments is a pretty great domain name. It sounds authoritative. It sounds like it's a trusted source. So with the domain names you're looking for, is it a trusted source, and would you do business with it? So the third question to ask yourself when buying and selling domains for profit is it available, right? You don't want to go through all the trouble of doing some research, looking at keywords, just to figure out that these domain names aren't even available.
Yeah, and if the domain name that you want is already taken, which a lot of them will be, head over to the aftermarket so that way you can buy it from people who either already own the name or maybe if it's expired and they don't plan on using it anymore.
Yeah, there are a couple of great aftermarket locations, like GoDaddy Auctions is one of the largest. There's also afternic.com and then cedo.com that you can use to see if these domains are listed elsewhere and potentially buy it at a premium cost. But if there's that return on investment, it's worth it.
The next step is evaluate the price. So you already have your domain name that you want in mind. How do you know that it's a fair price though?
Right. So domain name buying and selling is pretty relative. What might be worth something to me is worth maybe nothing or everything to you. But there are a couple free tools that you can use to help you just evaluate the price.